You ever wonder who's behind the curtain building the incredibly complex engines that make the global financial system actually, well, work? Today, we're going to do just that. We're going to pull back that curtain and demystify one of the most important and maybe most misunderstood roles in all of finance, the quant. So yeah, let's just dive right in.
So, first things first, what is a quantitative researcher? We call them quants for short. It's a title that gets thrown around a lot, right? And it usually comes with this aura of insane complexity and super high stakes. We're going to break down exactly what these folks do, the tools they use, and why they're so incredibly vital to the financial world. The best way to think about them is as these hidden architects. You don't see them, but they are designing and building everything behind the scenes. They're using a potent mix of math, mountains of data, and cutting-edge tech to build the systems that price everything, manage enormous risk, and invent new trading strategies.
Okay, so if they're architects, they need a solid foundation and a pretty serious set of tools, right? But for a quant, that foundation isn't built with bricks and steel. No. It's built with numbers, with code, and with some seriously deep academic knowledge. Let's take a look at what's actually in their toolkit.
The path to becoming a quant, it almost always starts in the world of academia. And we're talking about really intense programs, a master's in computational finance, or even a PhD in physics or mathematics. These are the fields that really forge that analytical mind, the kind of mind that can look at the world and see it as a giant system of probabilities and equations.
Now this is where that theory really hits the road. Quants have to be fluent in coding languages. Think Python, which is amazing for chewing through data, and then C++, which is all about pure, unadulterated speed. And that is absolutely critical when a single microsecond can mean the difference between profit and loss. And they use these powerful methods like Monte Carlo simulations, which sounds fancy, but it's basically a way to run thousands of possible financial futures at once to see the whole range of what might happen.
All right, so they had their toolkit. What's the first big job, especially for quants inside the big banks? It all comes down to one word: risk. Their most critical task day in and day out is to model, to measure, and hopefully to tame the massive financial risks these places face every single day.
A huge piece of that risk puzzle is something called FRTB.
I know, it's a mouthful, but you can just think of it as a global rulebook that was created after the 2008 financial crisis. Its whole purpose is to make sure banks have enough cash on hand to survive a really bad market shock. And the quants? They're the ones building the models to prove their bank is following these incredibly important rules.
Then you've got this one, IRRB. This is all about interest rates. What happens if a central bank suddenly jacks up interest rates? How does that ripple through all the bank's loans and accounts? Quants build these super sophisticated models to play out those what-if scenarios. It gives the bank a map to help them navigate through what can be some pretty choppy economic waters. And then there's CVA, or Credit Valuation Adjustment. Honestly, this is just a brilliant idea. Okay, imagine two big companies make a deal. There's always a risk, right? A risk that one of them could go out of business before they pay up. CVA calculates the exact price of that risk. It's basically the cost of an insurance policy on that financial deal. And quants are the wizards who figure out exactly how much that insurance should cost.
And just to give you a sense of the sheer scale we're talking about here, look at this. A single senior quant might be in charge of validating more than 18 of these incredibly complex models. Every one of those acronyms we just went through, FRTB, IRRBB, CVA, each one is its own universe of complexity. And these quants have to master all of it. It's just a massive, massive responsibility. But hey, quants don't just play defense, managing all that risk. They also get to go on offense. They use their skills to actively hunt for opportunities in the market. This is where they shift from protecting the firm to building the very engines of profit, automated trading strategies.
This timeline gives you a really cool snapshot of how a quant's career can evolve. You can almost see the story here. It starts with pure research, digging into new ideas. Then it moves into actually developing and deploying those ideas as trading models. And eventually it leads to specializing in the most complex risk frameworks out there. Each step just builds on the last one.
So early on, at a place like Algotech, a quant is kind of like a scientist in a lab. They're just sifting through mountains and mountains of data, searching for these little hidden patterns and signals. The whole goal is to find some kind of repeatable edge, a tiny inefficiency in the market that they can capture and turn into a profitable, fully automated strategy. Then, as their career progresses, the focus shifts from that lab to, let's call it, the factory floor. At a firm like GPSK, the job is to take those promising research ideas and engineer them into rock-solid real-world systems. That means running huge backtests to see how the strategy would have done in the past. And then, the scary part, deploying it live where speed and absolute reliability are everything. So what's next? I mean, in a field that is always about finding the next advantage, the next edge, what's the new frontier? Well, it's probably not a huge surprise that the answer is artificial intelligence. Let's see how AI is completely shaking up the world of the quant.
Okay, this is where it gets really mind-bending. Just look at the titles of these recent research papers. Quants are now using large language models, yeah, the same kind of tech that powers ChatGPT, to read company reports and predict if they're a good credit risk. They're building AI systems to make those CVA and risk models we talked about way faster and way smarter. They're even using AI to stress test the entire financial system. This is truly the bleeding edge.
And what I think is so cool is that all this crazy innovation, it's not just happening inside those giant traditional banks anymore. A lot of it is being driven by these smaller, specialized research labs and these nimble entrepreneurial firms. It just goes to show you, there's this vibrant, almost startup-like energy at the cutting edge of the quant world, with teams racing to find that next huge breakthrough.
So there you have it. We've gone on quite a journey, huh? We started in the abstract world of pure mathematics, and we ended up with AI-powered trading bots. What we've seen is that the quant is that essential bridge between those two worlds. They are the architect who designs, builds, and maintains the incredibly complex engine that makes modern finance go.
And all of this leaves us with one last, really fascinating question to chew on. We've seen quants master risk, we've seen them automate trading, and now we're seeing them pioneer AI. So as our entire financial system just becomes more and more and more data-driven, the real question isn't if there will be a next great challenge, but what is it going to be? And how will these architects of finance